Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator news and updates. And although we just did a big one, there is still a ton of information to discuss. However, in this particular video, feel free to simply minimize and listen to the sound of my beautiful voice serenading you with absolutely wonderful Microsoft Flight Simulator news. Stick around. If you are interested in acquiring any of my Overkill's tutorial guides for Microsoft Flight Simulator, please consider joining me on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future updates and future guides that will be coming down the road. Link to Patreon can be found in the description below. Okay, so we have a bunch of aircraft information. There's a couple other pieces of information outside of just planes, but today we are focusing very highly on quite a few aircraft. So the first one comes up with the Hughes H1 Racer being released from Microsoft Flight Simulator. The developers HCG Digital Arts announced their release in our rendition of the original H1 Racer. Now, the Hughes H1 Racer was a very major milestone in aviation back in the 1930s. It was one of the fastest aircraft in both just single-engine flight as well as transcontinental flight. Broke quite a few speed records. Gosh, I cannot talk today, guys. Forgive me. I promise I'll try to sort my tongue out here. Now, you can pick this aircraft up from the sim market for 1448 euros. The aircraft comes with quite a few pretty awesome features, such as responsive and fun flight model, lots of interactable switches and levers, fuel pumps, fuel transfer switches, dust engine heat, smoke effects, and all the good jazz that comes along with it. There's quite a bit of cool things that are aside from just your standard aircraft things that I do want to mention. First off, that I found really interesting was, and this is the first one that I've really seen label this out as part of their features, is new propeller simulation. So one of the things that grabs me about new propeller simulation is this means that this is a completely custom animation of the propeller, or are they referring to just overall propeller performance? Now, obviously, it comes with computational fluid dynamics. Now, what that means to us, anytime you guys see CFD, Charlie Foxtrot Delta, next to an aircraft or as an aircraft feature, computational fluid dynamics essentially means that it is continuously updating the aircraft's performance and behavior based on the environmental effects such as wind flow. And then it goes far, far further into that, but that is a very high level understanding of what it is. We want CFD. You want computational fluid dynamics. It means that as the environment around the aircraft changes, whether that be because you have increased speed, decreased speed, pitch, etc., or because the environment outside has changed, wind, rain, temperature, etc., that the aircraft's behavior is going to change as well, thus providing you with a much better flight simulation experience. Of course, it comes with 4K PBR textures. I believe that should just flat out be a default, but you're actually going to be surprised to hear one of the aircraft that's coming may not have that based on what I've read. And then you obviously, not obviously, but also get a weather preset for August of 1935. 1935 is one of the big records were set in the Hughes H1 Flyer, and of course, it was also flown by Hughes himself. So, pretty awesome aircraft. Definitely a goofy-looking plane, in my personal opinion. It's got the big, giant engine cowling on it, but again, this is where we really started moving away from dual-wing flight over to single-wing flight. And it has that racer look to it. If you guys look at modern racers today, they all have that same sort of build to them. And so it's a really hot looking aircraft in my personal opinion. And it just dawned on me that you guys can't see any of this, and you'd probably like to be able to see some of this. So let me go ahead and get it off of my freaking thing here, and we can figure this out, because that is not what you guys want to be seeing, and I am terribly sorry for that. There you go. That's what you guys are probably interested in looking at. Took the whole you guys don't need to be watching a little too seriously on that one, so forgive me. All right, anyway, there we go. So now let's go ahead and move on to our next announcement, which brings us over to DC Designs releases the AV8B Harrier 2 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. The Harrier is an incredibly complex and very awesome aircraft, and one of my favorites in DCS world, again, just because of the complexity. It is a very, very difficult aircraft to fly and has a lot of really awesome features to it. Now, the aircraft, or the developer, does boast a custom-coded VTOL mechanism, and VTOL is vertical takeoff or landing. I'm really interested about this one, and I'm going to be completely honest, guys. I have not been a fan of DC Design's aircraft in the past, and I know that I've been pretty brutal. And that is because I'm very, very heavy into a lot of these simulations, and I tend to be a little bit too on the nitpicky side. Trying to open my doors up a little bit, and remember that I am not the only one who flies these, and so I want to make sure that I announce these to you guys who may not be quite as picky and as much of a pain in the butt as I am, because I know that I am. I absolutely accept that. So one of the things that I'm actually interested about is the VTOL experience and whether or not things like, for example, the water will be required. There is a water switch that when the aircraft reaches a VTOL performance and aero cooling can no longer be obtained, meaning that air passing through the intakes and the vanes can no longer cool the system. You actually have to turn on a water system, which I believe you only have like 500 gallons, maybe less than that. I can't remember. But you can only maintain, for example, a hover while that water is running. And then once that water runs out, you will find that the engine will begin overheating very, very quickly. And you have to get back either into forward motion or get down and shut the engine off. So it's a pretty awesome procedure. It really is. And can be quite troublesome to fly this particular aircraft. So, of course, with any of these military aircraft, doesn't matter who the developer is. One of my standpoints when it comes to Microsoft Flight Simulator versus, one of the arguments is, well, if you want military aircraft, you want MilSim, go DCS World. If you want MilSim, yes, DCS World's where you go. That's where you get the combat. That's where you get to drop your bombs. That's where you get to use these aircraft in their highest fidelity form. I mean, truly, the systems are all modeled and get to learn how to fly it like a real pilot as best as you can from a simulation standpoint. But one of the cool things about having these kind of aircraft in Microsoft Flight Simulator is you get to travel anywhere in the world with them. Put on your own air shows, tour around, zoom past your own house, pretend, that your parents are hanging out in the front yard and watching you rip over the top of it in some hypersonic jet or supersonic jet. But no, I've never done that. I don't ever daydream like that. But what the heck, right? Maybe one day. Anyway, moving on. Next up, we have Majestic Software confirms the Q400 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. This is one of the ones that sort of caught my attention, and I don't know how I feel about it. And the part that I don't know how I feel about it is not the aircraft. The aircraft itself is an awesome aircraft, and again, a perfect addition to the Microsoft Flight Simulator world, as there are many locations throughout the world that this aircraft is very, very well suited for, whether it be, maybe northern continental, the poles, things like down in the Caribbean with the short runways, Lukla Airport. These are things where this aircraft can shine very, very well. My issue is not that the aircraft is being brought to Microsoft Flight Simulator. My issue is that the initial release of the Q400 is a port over from P3D. The issue again falls in there is that the P3D doesn't have the same graphics requirement or graphics, I should say, expectation that is to be expected now with Microsoft Flight Simulator, especially given the fact that the simulator is really now starting to smooth out. Yes, I know, guys, there are still plenty of issues. Do not think that I am pushing those aside. Absolutely, I am very well aware many people still experiencing unfortunate crash of desktops and a lot of very bad behavior. So pushing that aside for just a moment, but trust me, I have not negated that. Simply stating that, the simulator being where it is today, I'm a little concerned about this being a port from P3D because that makes me wonder what the textures are going to be like. If the textures are truly that of a P3D nature and have not been adjusted to match Microsoft Flight Simulator, just comparing the aircraft to the outside surroundings, it is going to be very, very noticeable that it was a port. Such as, next to terminals, taxiways, carts that are on the ground, other aircraft around you, your aircraft's going to stand out like a sore thumb. So that is sort of a concerning point to me, and I feel like maybe if I'm correct and reading this correctly, and that's what's actually happening, that could actually be a bad thing for the developer, and I really hope that they address that and think about that, again, assuming I am reading that and understood that correctly. Now, there is no timeline as far as when the project will be released, as everything internal to the aircraft, gauges, switches, electricity, etc., must be written from the ground up. It is unable to be ported. So that work is in process in the air, and that is still good to know that all of the coding internal to the aircraft will be written from, again, the ground up, and therefore be met with the Microsoft Flight Simulator standards that we have come to expect. Now, one of the other things they did announce is that they are also going to be bringing a Q300 V2 to Microsoft Flight Simulator, and this aircraft will be done from scratch. However, they did go on to state that that will not even begin production until the Q400 has been successfully ported over to Microsoft Flight Simulator. To P3D users, something that if you guys happen to be watching this particular video, if something you want to be aware of is that 32-bit version platforms of FSX, P3D version 3 and below will no longer be supported by the Majestic team. P3D version 4 and 5 will continue to be supported, although new development will cease, meaning no new features, no new aircraft will be brought over to those particular simulators. But anyone who's currently under the 64-bit versions and any issues that arise, the aircraft will still be adjusted and bugs will be fixed, is what this sounds like. So let's just go ahead and see what we have next. Interesting information about the Q400. All right, I keep talking about these types of sceneries, and I'm loving that we're seeing more and more of them versus the airport. Aerosoft Offshore Landmarks has been announced and released. The North Sea has been released for Microsoft Flight Simulator. This means over 380 heliports, 196 new airports to discover across the North Sea, among 800 surface ships, as well as a ton of other points of interest and cool sightseeing marks. The 380 heliports, I think, caught my attention the most because that's desperately something that we need more of in Microsoft Flight Simulator, especially with the growing demand for helicopters. Now, these images look absolutely fantastic. We have multiple ships, oil rigs. I think the oil rigs are going to be a fun one to go and park at. You know, again, you could do some really cool missions. What happened there? I'm not sure what's going on with that particular picture. Hey, what happened? Why are we losing these? I don't know why they're blowing out like that. Oh, that is definitely not me. It is the website. Okay, well, that sucks. Okay, there we go. That's a beautiful shot. Absolutely gorgeous. So things like this, again, brings us more things that we can see up in the North Sea. So this is going to cover the North Sea, the English Channel, and I am missing one. So give me a second. Let me skim back through it here to make sure that I don't miss it. Oh, and the Irish Sea. That's what I was missing. So pretty vast region of space to go and travel around and be able to see a whole bunch of new products and really awesome sites over in the area. There's a very beautiful YouTube video that I highly suggest you guys check out before purchasing. You can purchase this for 14.28 euros from the Aerosoft site. So pretty awesome stuff, guys. Pretty awesome stuff. I love that that developers are starting to move away from just the airports and starting to expand out further into the surrounding areas, because that's what makes the flying fun. I cannot believe my eyes that there is yet a third, count them, 3 P40s currently in development for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And in my opinion, guys, I have to say, developers, you guys got to step away from the P40 now. I mean, that's just my personal opinion, but we'll see what you guys think right now. So Flight Replica previews the P40N. The P40N was one of the later versions of the P40, had the more powerful engine, stretched fuselage, was a bit more maneuverable and quite a bit faster. Had some other developments as well, but the biggest thing was the Allison engine. The Allison engine was a very powerful engine, very, very fast. Now, they are absolutely gorgeous screenshots of the aircraft. I have nothing against the development and what has been done here. It definitely looks gorgeous. My only issue, again, is that we are having so many. We have 3. There's the INI builds, there's the big radials, and now we have the Flight Replicas P40. I guess my only hiccup to this is that there are so many other aircraft to choose from. Why are we hyper focusing on the P40? But to each their own, I guess. I'll let you guys be the decider of which direction you want to go here. Now, according to the update for the development of the aircraft is about 98% complete, and we could see the aircraft as early as within the next week or two. So pretty awesome stuff as far as that goes. Again, I have absolutely nothing against the hard work the developers are putting in. It's just with this kind of competition with the same aircraft, I would be more concerned from a developer standpoint of how much sales you're actually going to get when you do things like this. With so much competition with the same bird, I don't know. I don't know how to state that. Now, we don't have any kind of price point or anything like that on the aircraft yet, but something to be aware of. Moving forward, we have a bit more information on the airplane Heaven Avro Lancaster. Now, the Lancaster, again, is a World War II tail dragger bomber. Very, very capable aircraft. It was very, very well renowned, if you will, in World War II. There was definitely no stranger to anyone of the era. Now, the Lancaster external model is just about complete. All the texturing is just about done. However, much of the internal texturing still needs to be complete. We still don't have any kind of release date yet as far as when the aircraft will be available or when it's going to its alpha stages. Much of the internal texturing still needs to be completed on the aircraft, but it was very nice of the developers to release some screenshots and give us an idea of how things are progressing with it. This is an aircraft I will be picking up. Just because, again, of its nostalgia, of the age of it, and it's the fact that it's something completely different to be brought to Microsoft Flight Simulator from a bomber's perspective. Now, you can see once again here in these textures, they have much of the internal to still finish the artwork on, but it's super exciting to see that it is coming along, especially after they were so quiet for so long about the development of the aircraft. So hopefully more information to come on that as time gets closer. Moving away from the aircraft for just a second, we just talked about not too long ago the release of Navigraph Charts 8. Navigraph Charts 8 was amazing, is amazing. And one of the things that shocked everybody was on the initial announcement of Navigraph Charts 8, they stated that the in-game panel would not be updated. Simply because of in-game coding restrictions and SDK restrictions that made it impossible to really bring a lot of the features that came with Navigraph Charts 8 to the sim. It would seem, as the article goes on to state here specifically, 16 days later after stating that, they have actually announced that the in-game panel will be coming very soon. So users of Navigraph Charts 8 and those who missed the in-game panel functionality, you can rest assured that that is coming back. Where this really shines is for you virtual reality users. You will have access to this while in your VR headset. Once again, being able to take advantage of all the features that Navigraph Charts 8 provides. Guys, check out my channel for the videos. You can just do a search for Navigraph Charts 8. I highly recommend, if you guys haven't touched on this one yet, to take a peek at that. It is a very, very robust piece of software that is absolutely excellent for flight planning, navigation, and just flight monitoring as well. Okay, so we were just talking about one of these, but AnyBuilds has given us an aircraft development here. We have the A310, the P40F, and the A3600F as well. So first, we're going to go ahead and talk about the A310. Even though it has been out for quite a few weeks, the team has stated they're committed to supporting the aircraft and addressing the bugs that have been announced by you, the end users, and much of the rest of the team since the release, such as the taxi and nav lights, making sure that the in-game ATC is working correctly with the A10, as well as looking at several other fixes. Now, one of the things that you guys can do if you are opted into it is you can opt into the latest beta version for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And one of the things that they specifically state is that you should notice an FPS improvement with the aircraft, but they go on to state that optimizations on the product are continuing. And the P40F Warhawk. Okay, AnyBuilds team has, again, not given a release date of the particular aircraft as of yet, but have stated that is coming sometime next week. So again, right around the corner. Now, upon release, the plane will feature, again, the computational fluid dynamics that we talked about earlier in the video, as well as quite a few other updates. Now, one of the things that I will give these guys here is they've laid out what looks like essentially two big different phases of how the patching and update to the aircraft will be progressed. So patch 1, which is to arrive shortly after the release, will contain any bug fixes or major performance issues that have been noticed upon the release, basically from us. It will also feature phase 2 of the EFB, which will integrate basic A to B routing, basically direct flight. So you can plug in an IF or a flight route from Tucson to Phoenix, for example, but you won't be able to include waypoints, etc. So that is one thing to think about there, but at least you'll have some sort of form of navigation on the EFB. Now, shortly after that, the team is anticipating patch 2. Patch 2 will be a little bit more comprehensive. The article goes on to state, and I quote, and come with several new features and changes to the systems of the plane. It will include fuel system improvements, including a drop tank. Ground handling will be overhauled in patch 2 as well. Now, this one sort of throws me off. That I didn't like to read, because what that tells me is, let me complete that sentence. Ground handling will be overhauled in patch 2 as well as and will specifically focus on simulating a tail dragger. which tells me that on the initial release of this aircraft, it will not behave on the ground as a tail dragger does. And I guess, again, that's another, like, I'm glad that they are forthcoming with this information, and that sets the expectation and announces that, yes, it will be addressed. But I guess, again, this is sort of one that shocked me with so much competition with this particular aircraft, that it's like, why would you want to release that knowing that the performance of the aircraft, basically stating that the performance of the aircraft on the ground will not handle the way a tail dragger should? Now, some may care about that, some may not. It really just depends. Now, this next part, they get props for, because this is, again, where we get back into the true to life simulation aspects of maintaining and flying one of these aircraft. So the other thing that can be anticipated with patch 2 is it will have system deterioration. An example that the team used is oil changes. If you do not change your oil on a regular basis, this will impact the temperature and regulation of your oil. And last but not least, the patch will bring electronic pitch controls to the aircraft, end quote. So this does seem to be, based on all the information that I've read thus far, the AnyBuilds P40 seems like in the end is going to be the most advanced of the group. One of the things they also do specifically state is that you will not be required to use the EFB in order to fly the aircraft. It is not a must. It is simply going to have a bunch of features that will enhance the experience. Now, as far as using the EFB for maintenance, things like that, I can't see any other way that you'd be able to do that. So that must be a must there. However, again, it's just one of those, like, 3 different variants of the P40, 3 different developers. It's sort of like one of those, like, but I'll let you guys throw your 2 cents in down below. Let me know what you guys think about having 3 different developers of the same aircraft. Now, AnyBuilds has also shared a little insight into their 2023 roadmap. One of those being the A300-600F will be coming to Microsoft's Flight Simulator. Currently undergoing a new exterior 3D model. The team will share more previews of this plane as it progresses. And then here, guys, on the screen, if you'd like, you can check out all the features that are being listed upon the P40F Warhawks release. Finally, last up on our list is Phoenix. Once again, provides an update on the A320 IAE version and other developments. The A320 by Phoenix Simulations, for those of you guys who don't know, is a very advanced, very, very well done rendition of the A320. Me personally, I still have quite a few issues to, really picking out the nitty gritty differences between it and the Flybywire model. But that is not in any way to shake down Phoenix's incredibly hard work and dedication to their aircraft. It has received multiple updates, and they have done amazing work with this plane, and it is definitely an outstanding piece of equipment to have in your simulation. Until now, the article goes on to state that only the CFM model of the engine, or CFM engine model, has been available at Microsoft Flight Simulator, and this is actually kind of a sad thing. The reason why the IAE has not reached the simulator yet is unfortunate because the developer is in Ukraine and is without power and heating, or at least has been, is what the article states. So prayers, good thoughts, whatever it may be, guys, send them over to the developer. That's obviously an incredibly horrible situation going on in Ukraine. We all know that. And then without power and heat, and right now, especially in this time of year, mercy, that's terrible. That's just awful. That's scary things to think about. A lot of things can go very, very bad under those conditions out in that region of the world. Gets very, very cold. So best thoughts going out that way to the developer. However, it did say that IAE engine is or modeling is being developed at other locations, and things are starting to head in the right direction. Makes the engine model math more performant by nearly 1,000 times, according to the developer, with the implementation of fast lookup algorithms. So good news coming down as far as the engine model goes. The aircraft's EFB is also being rewritten. Now, although many features of this rewrite will not be noticeable necessarily to end users, it will open up the doors to many, many other integrations and future features to come to the EFB later on for the A320 from Phoenix. Now, again, this is an incredible aircraft, and they are doing something even more amazing with it. Now that MSFS, according to the article, has mostly matured and stabilized. It's clear that this from the developer, that we undershot a little bit on this front and left a lot on the table, dubbed version 2 internally for the a near total rebuild. This will be a substantial and free upgrade to the A320 product. So they're basically going to be rebuilding the product from the ground up. They are dubbing it version 2. Tons and tons of things are going to be improved, both visually and to a more accurate rendition of the aircraft. And to existing owners, it is going to be a free update, so you don't have to worry about having any further expenditure once this version 2 has been released. Well, my friends, that is going to wrap up today's news and updates for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Again, some very big news. It sounds like Sim Update 11 really did bring a lot of new things to the table and is opening up the doors. As many developers, we are starting to see more and more of things being rewritten and redone from behind the scenes. And that is a very, very good sign for us. As these developers continue to find new ways to integrate some of the new features and the new performance options that are available with Sim Update 11, we should see a much better simulation performance with the aircraft. One of the ones that I'm still keeping an eye on and waiting for a big update on, I'm hoping that at some point it's going to come, is to the Osprey. I really do enjoy that aircraft. It's a ton of fun to fly, and I'm hoping that we see some news on that soon as well. As always, guys, stay tuned for the channel for future updates of news, terrain, scenery, add-ons. You guys know the drill. You know what we do here. And, of course, just the good old time flying and watching me make a fool of myself. Above all else, my friends, stay safe and healthy, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.